better at Chess Nation. What's good? This is Terrence, and so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go through some chess puzzles. And the reason I want to go through some chess puzzles is because I wanted to show you guys some of the things I do to get better at chess and improve your skill. So, endgame is a very important part of the game. I'm going to make a video on it, as well as one in the opening and the middle game. Those are the three phases of the game of chess. The reason endgame is pretty important, and a lot of grandmasters think it's important. One of the reasons I think it's important is because with the endgame, you usually see a lot of different checkmates there. Now, you don't have to be in the endgame phase of the chess game to end the game. So, what I'm going to go through today are different checkmates, and I've lowered the rating to, I've lowered the rating so I could explain it to you guys, and you guys will be able to spot some different things out based on where I think you guys are. And you know, if I put these puzzles out there and you be like, okay, these puzzles are too easy, let me know in the comments below. I'll increase the difficulty, and you know, we can get some harder puzzles going there. But these are all checkmate puzzles, and it's important to practice checkmate puzzles because, again, it doesn't matter what phase of the game you are in, you can get checkmate at any phase. It's more important for you to know the pattern of a checkmate. That way you can look for that no matter what the board looks like. So we're gonna see a few different puzzles. I'll try to do about 5 to 6 of them. Hopefully it's, you know, very different so you can see the different situations of where you can get checkmate, where, you know, sometimes the board is empty or sometimes the board is full. Alright, so let's get it going here. So what I will do is I will solve the puzzle and then I'll explain the logic behind it. So what would I play here? Okay, perfect. So in this case, first thing we need to note, let's take note of where the king is. So the king is on the edge of the board. And when the king is on the edge of the board, that means, you know, either on the 8th rank, the 1st rank, the H file, or the A file. When they're on the edge of the board, they only have 5 possible squares they can go to. So knowing that, then we check, okay, so what pieces do we have blocking any squares? So we have this bishop here. It's eyeing down this diagonal right here. So it's already cutting off this square and this square. Cutting off and protecting. So it's important to take note of that. And then of the 5 squares the king has, you know, getting rid of the obvious. And when I say obvious, I mean what square, you know, this color piece, you know, the opponent's own piece is blocking. So this pawn right here is blocking a potential square that the king can go to. So that's 1, 2. So there's 3 squares right now that the king cannot go to. So our job is to find out, okay, how can we, you know, make sure the king can go to these 2 squares right here. So right now we have 3 squares blocked, and then this queen and rook combo right here, this queen and rook battery, and I'll explain what a battery is later. But this battery right here, this queen and rook combo, is cutting off these 2 squares right here as well. So now the king only has 1 square it can go to. So how do we take control of that 1 square? We start by moving the queen there. So that's queen sacrifice. And I know for some beginners, it's just like, you just feel like your heart just got taken out your stomach because nobody wants to part with their queen. But it's okay, because you will see from a lot of different checkmates that it is okay to part with your queen. And not even just checkmates, you'll see from a lot of different chess tactics that it is okay to part with your queen. So in this case, the reason it was okay to part with the queen is because, again, this bishop is eyeing down this diagonal. So this bishop is controlling this square right here, which I'm about to move a rook to, and now that's checkmate. So this rook is doing this type of damage just by being on that square. So this rook, a rook on the edge of the board, controls in a T formation. So this rook is controlling these 2 squares. So it's attacking the king on this square, and it's also controlling this square right here, because, again, this rook controls this whole horizontal, and it's controlling this square right here, as well as this whole file. So we already have 4 squares that this rook is controlling just by being there. this bishop attacks that diagonal, which means it controls this square. So that's 5. So these 4 squares right here, the king can't move to. The only square the king would be able to move to if it was open was this square, but it's not because this piece is there. That's why that's a checkmate. So, and you will see this combination of rook, bishop checkmates right there. So it's all about if that diagonal is open and getting your rook on the same color square as that bishop diagonal. And so a lot of chess is looking at the board and using your opponent's setup against them. And you'll see that as we look at more checkmates. All right, so let's go to the next one. Okay, this one. Okay, so this one is a smothered mate. So first thing we take note of, where is the king? So the king is in the corner. So when a king is in the corner, they only have 3 squares they can go to. So this square right here, this square, and this square. If the king was on this side, it would be these squares right here. But it's the square in front, the square diagonally in front, and the square on the side of it. Now, looking at this, the king is trapped in that corner. It looks very well protected, right? So, what we would need to do is, we would need to see, okay, how can we attack that? So, first thing we do is we would take that pawn. And the reason we would take that pawn is to not only get rid of some of the protection there, but we also want to bring the king forward. The reason we want to bring the king forward is because now we have this nice little attack with the queen. So, how does the queen attack? It attacks vertically, forward and backwards, horizontally, left to right, and diagonally, like a bishop. So it attacks like a rook and a bishop. So this queen is controlling everything on this file, and this queen is controlling everything on this diagonal. So the 3 squares in front of the king are all being controlled right now. So, and there's nothing black can do. So this is considered a smothered mate. So this queen is controlling that diagonal that the king is on, and it's it's controlling this file the king is on. It's also controlling this diagonal, and that was made possible by sacrificing the rook. And the only piece that could take that rook was the king, so that brought the king forward out of the corner, and then our queen was able to come in, do some damage. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, so this one is a little bit more tricky, and this involves a technique called the X-ray. So the way the X-ray works is that, so you pay attention to this setup right here, right? So this queen is attacking this rook, and these 2 rooks have a rook battery. They're, one rook is backing each other up. So if I were to take this rook would just come, and that was just exchange of rooks. So we want to exchange pieces, but not like that. What we want to actually do is we want to take out the back of this battery. The reason we want to take out the back is because the back is what's really holding it up, almost like a leg. Like this rook right here is like a tabletop. This rook right here is the leg. So what we need to do is we need to take out the leg. Now, before we take out the leg, let's pay attention to where the king is to see if that's a viable option. So, king is in this corner, and as in the example we just saw, when the king is in the corner, you have 1, 2, 3 squares it can go. So, we take note of that. So, then the next thing we need to do is see what squares are we blocking. So, we are blocking, all 3 of the squares are blocked right now. This rook is going down that file, which means it controls these 2 squares. And black's own pawn is in front of it, which means the pawn is blocking the square. So all 3 of the squares around the king are blocked. So the next thing we need to do is we need to see, okay, well, how can we attack the king? Now, that goes back to the X-ray technique I just told you. So again, with the X-ray technique, you want to attack the leg instead of the table. So the table is usually what's in front. The leg is what's behind. So we want to take out this rook. Because remember, that rook in the back is only protected by the rook in front. And the rook in front is only protected, well, not only, but is mainly protected by the rook in the back. At least on that file. That knight was attacking this rook right here. But since we brought our queen there, the only piece that would be protecting it is that rook. And that's where our other rook comes in. And that's check, right? This isn't checkmate yet, but it's very close. The reason it's not checkmate is because this queen can come here, and then we bring that rook in, and that's checkmate. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, so for this one, so first, let's see where the king is first, and then let's point out some other stuff. King is on the back row, so on the edge of a board. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 possible squares it can go to. Let's knock out the obvious. 1, 2, 3. Those 3 squares are blocked by black's pieces. That means black's king cannot move to those squares. So black only has this square and this square. So, and the reason this is important because this rook right here is blocking a check, or this queen is blocking a check by this rook right here. So that's why that queen is not going to be able to move. So, so what we would do first is not what I thought we were going to do first. Okay. So I think we're going to take the queen for... No? What? Oh my god. Oh, gosh. Terrence, I'm being silly. I'm being silly. Okay. Here's what we do. So, this rook is important, and I should have looked a little bit more at this. Okay. So this rook right here is attacking the king, but this queen is protecting it. So this queen cannot move because this rook is here. So that means if we were to do something like this, the king would have to move because this queen right here cannot move to take this knight. So that if you look at different games, that becomes important because you'll start to see like there are certain moves you couldn't do that you now can do because a piece is pinned to another piece. So this queen was pinned to the king, which means it couldn't move. So that means the square that probably wouldn't be open if this rook wasn't here is now open because this piece can't attack it. All right, so that's step one. The next step is like, okay, so now this square and this square is blocked off. So now the king is on the only square that it can move to. So now we need to attack that square. So what do? We attack that square. We take the pawn. Or once we take the pawn, the queen can now move because there's no king there. And now this queen is again pinned to the king. Then what we do? We take the queen. So this square, once it's in the corner, we remember that those squares are blocked off, and then now this square was getting blocked off. So we have blocked off all 3 squares the king can move to. All right, let's go to the next one. All right, so we'll do one more, and then I think that will be it for today. So, okay, so the first thing we need to take note of. Okay, so the king has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so the king has 8 squares around it that it could possibly move to. So now let's look at where the king can actually go. So right now, if it were white's turn, they could take this rook, but it's not white's turn, it's black's turn. So we'll count this as a square that the king cannot go to right now because they can't. Okay, so that's 1 square. Now this rook right here is cutting off 8 squares, or not 8 squares, well, it's cutting off 5 squares. The square it's on, and the 2 right here on this row, and 2 right here in this file. This king is cutting off these 3 squares as well. Because remember, the kings are always going to be at least a space in between. So right now it's just like, okay, so the king can't checkmate each other. But as you get better and play more, you start to realize, well, that's important. If the king can only stuck right here, can't get any closer, that means that the king is pretty much stuck behind this row, this little invisible barrier right there that the king can't cross. It's like, there's a line the king can always cross, and that's the line. So there's that. So right now, these 3 squares are cut off. This pawn is protected by this rook, so the king can't go there. These 2 squares are protected by this rook, so the king can't go there. And these 2 squares are protected by this rook, so the king can go there. But this rook right here is in danger, so we have to move it. So we start by moving it there. Check. So now let's look at what has changed. So what has changed is the king has moved to the edge. Now when the king is on the edge, that means they only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares that they can go to. Now, the king is trapped right here. You can't go there, there, or there because of this rook right here. This rook is controlling those files because it's protected by this pawn. The king can go here because this king is attacking this square and this square. So now it's like, okay, we need to find a piece that could take away this, well, not take away the square because the square is already taken away, but put the king in check. See, we've cut off the squares the king can go to. Now we need to attack the king. When you attack the king and they can't get out of that attack, it's checkmate. That's what that is, checkmate. So this rook is controlling this file, this rook is controlling that file, this king is controlling some extra squares in here. It's checkmate. Alright, let's do one more. Okay. So this is going to be a fun one. Now, this one is a little bit more advanced, and I definitely recommend checking out king and pawn endgames. It will help you out a lot. So, our goal here is to make sure that king... Okay, so white's goal is to make sure black's king doesn't get in front of the pawn, because if black's king gets in front of the pawn is going to promote automatically. So right now that doesn't make sense, but once I'll make a king and pawn endgame video at some point and break it down. It'll talk about opposition and promoting, and that will make things a lot clearer. But for now, that's what white is trying to do. White is trying to make sure this king, black's king, doesn't get in front of this pawn. Black, on the other hand, is trying to gain opposition and also prevent white from getting in front of the pawn as well. Because if it comes down to a point where the white's queen gets like directly in front of the pawn, then they could draw the game. We don't want them to draw the game. We want to win the game, and this is very winnable. So the first thing we do is we move our king up. Now, by moving our king up, white, of course, can't go there. It already couldn't go there because the king was right there. So white was on the edge of the board, which means it only had 5 squares it could go to. So it couldn't go here, and it couldn't go here. So it was stuck to these 3 squares. These 3 squares right there. So I decided to move to that one. Okay. So now, what we need to do is we need to gain opposition. So opposition is... I should explain opposition. Let me show you what opposition looks like. This is opposition. Opposition is when one king, or the king, is lined up with an odd number of squares in front of the other king. And when they're directly lined up, whoever moves first loses opposition. Whoever moves second gains opposition. And the thing about having opposition and losing it is that it makes it... Actually, let's analyze this real quick. Okay, so when you... And actually, let's move a few moves here. Okay, so this is opposition, right? Black had opposition, or white had lost opposition, and black was able to gain opposition. And see, now what happens is this. When you have opposition, you are able to control where the other king can go. And I say that because when it's your turn to move, again, you direct where the game is going because it's your turn to move. That's why when it's down to a king and pawn endgame, you want to have opposition. You want to gain opposition. And there's different ways to gain it. There's distant opposition. There's direct opposition. You know, opposition is it's after a little bit of experience, you get it and you're able to play with it and understand it. It can be a little hard to explain sometimes, but once you get it and see it and use it, you understand why it's important. It's very, and it's a little bit complex because it comes down to something like this, like a simple end game, but understanding opposition makes it a lot easier to win this game. Because again, it's just a pawn and a king versus a king. And this game can be drawn, and this game can be won. So understanding opposition helps you understand how to win it. But so that's what I have for you guys for today. I hope you enjoyed this. If you guys like this type of video, please comment below. I will definitely do more of these. If you want to see more, puzzle analysis and the logic behind it, if you want to see more post-game chess analysis, if you want to see more during the game chess analysis, as in I'm playing somebody and I'm recording it, I'm talking through my moves and stuff like that, leave a comment below and let me know. I want to make more videos that you guys will watch and keep watching and can recommend to your friends, and that will help you subscribe to the channel. But that's all I have for you guys. Don't forget to like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Take care.